2026 already been a year for the Chiefs, and we're talking about the offseason. A star quarterback, future Hall of Famer Patrick Mahomes has had to have surgery on his knee that he blew out towards the end of the season last year. And I think they've made some very, very key additions this year in terms of their departures and people they brought in. Like Jalen Watson's no longer a Chief. He's with the Rams via trade. You've got, in free agency. Trent McDuffie got traded to the Rams. They no longer have Isaiah Pacheco, who's now with the Detroit Lions. Brian Cook is now in an AFC foe with the Cincinnati Bengals, one of the best safeties of football in my estimation. But a lot of this had to do with contracts. A lot of this had to do with depth and lack thereof and them having to move on to build their team. That's just the way the Kansas City Chiefs operate. But they bring in Kenneth Walker, who was a Super Bowl MVP, and I think it's huge because I don't think that the Chiefs have had a running game like this since Mahomes has been there. I don't think they have. And I think this will really help. They brought in Amari DeMarcado from the Cardinals, which was huge for depth. They also signed Mike Caliendo for depth along that offensive line. And remember, the Chiefs have 2 first-round picks in 2026. They've got 3 of the top 40 picks, and they've got 9 overall picks. So I won't be shocked if they go ahead and solidify that secondary, they solidify that offensive line, and then if they're also able to get people along the defensive line. They also signed Kyrish Tonga, which is huge, from New England, who's going to be paired at the other defensive tackle spot next to Chris Jones. So all those moves they made, re-signing Travis Kelce, bringing back Tyquan Thornton, like all that stuff matters in my estimation. But the biggest move that the Chiefs made was bringing Eric Bieniemy back in as the offensive coordinator. And I'm going to sit here and tell you why I hate that it ever had to go this way, that he ever left in the first place. Because for whatever reason, this narrative started to swirl around NFL circles. I heard it in the media, national. I heard it and watched it on TV. I heard so many people say this, and it was the dumbest thing ever. They were sitting here telling me that Eric Bieniemy had to leave Kansas City. That's right, no longer work under Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid and Brett Veach and that organization. He had to leave the Chiefs to prove that he could be an offensive coordinator and then prove that he could be a head coach on his own. Now, I want you to hear what I just said. They were saying that Eric Bieniemy had to leave Kansas City because the situation was too good. So you want somebody that's in an advantageous situation, somebody that's thriving, and somebody that is a reason why the team and the organization is thriving and helping the Chiefs win 2 Super Bowls in 5 years. You're telling me he has to leave his current situation because it's too good. So I get it. So when Joe Brady was the offensive coordinator for the Bills, somebody told him he needed to leave to prove that he could be good without Josh Allen. Now he just became the head coach of the Bills. So when Josh McDaniels was the OC of the Patriots, they said that he needed to leave New England to go prove that he could be an OC or a head coach somewhere. And remember, Josh McDaniels was getting plenty of head coaching jobs. Now, again, this is not apples to apples. I'm not comparing Eric Bieniemy to Joe Brady. I'm not comparing him to Josh McDaniels. If you think McDaniels is better than Bieniemy, I have no problem nor an issue with that. I'm simply saying Brian Daboll was the offensive coordinator of the Bills. Nobody said, hey, he needs to go somewhere else to prove that he can be an offensive coordinator outside of Josh Allen. At what point in time do offensive coordinators or defensive coordinators or people have to leave good situations to go to bad situations to prove that they can help, as if the good situation had nothing to do with them in the first place? That's what I don't understand. So Eric Bieniemy leaves, ends up becoming the coordinator for the Commanders for a year, and then ends up going to UCLA with Deshaun Foster. We know how that whole situation ended up if you follow college football at all. And then he became a running back coach for the Bears. So he not only took lateral moves, he took demotions just to come back to the Chiefs. So here's all I know about Eric Bieniemy, and here's all I know about the Kansas City Chiefs. Discipline is very important in the NFL. Accountability is very important in the NFL. Now, I'm not going to get into why Eric Bieniemy didn't get the head coaching job. The reason I'm not going to get into it is because I don't know the answer. I don't know why Eric Bieniemy didn't hire or wasn't hired. I don't know why he didn't interview well, quote unquote, based on what some people said. Maybe he wasn't a good fit for those positions. All that can be true. And I have no issue with that. I'm not sitting here caping for Eric Bieniemy as if he should be a head coach in the NFL. All I'm simply stating is that for somebody to have the level of success that he's had in Kansas City and to be one of the biggest reasons and components of an organization that has had success for almost a decade, I don't know why we expect people to be put in lesser situations or less than advantageous situations and then be successful. Why is that even a thing? I don't even understand why that has to be the circumstance. So now Kansas City, coming off of a year, they also bring in Justin Fields to back up Patrick Mahomes and likely to take all of the snaps in minicamp, all of the snaps in the preseason, and make sure that they can come together and get these reps. So if you're a Chiefs fan, and if you're somebody looking at the landscape of the AFC right now, I've heard people say, well, I need to see it from Kansas City before I can believe it. That's fine. I'm not one of those people. I'm sitting here saying that 2025 was a bump in the road for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that since Eric Bieniemy left, the offense didn't look right. And I don't mean the offense has to be explosive in terms of leading the league in 50-yard passes down the field. That's predicated on personnel and play calling. So if you don't have that personnel, I don't think you have to win that way. I don't think you need to try to win that way. I don't think you need to try to shape-shift an identity or create an identity that isn't prevalent to the team and the personnel that you have. But we've seen the Kansas City Chiefs, time after time, become very chameleon-like. That's why I think the comparison between the Patriots and the Chiefs is a phenomenal one, because like the Patriots under Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, they were very chameleon-like, and they adapted and adjusted to any situation necessary to be successful. That's what Kansas City did. And I think they did it without one of the best coaches in the NFL in Eric Bieniemy, because whether he's calling plays or not, and I firmly believe that he and Andy Reid are always complementary of one another. I think they're always working in conjunction with one another. I think they're always sharing ideas. So I don't care who puts the call in the headset of the quarterback, whether it's Patrick Mahomes or Justin Fields to start the 2026 season. The level of accountability and the level of hard knocks type situational football that Eric Bieniemy brings to the table is what's phenomenal. That's what's needed in Kansas City. So I think this is being overlooked. I think it's being underappreciated. I think it's being overvalued. I think people are saying, well, yeah, Eric Bieniemy's back, but it's not that big a deal because we saw what the Chiefs looked like last year. So if you want to take a Polaroid of the Chiefs in 2025, slap it on the refrigerator and say that's what they'll be moving forward, by all means, be my guest. I'm not going to live in that delusion. I'm not sitting here saying they're going to win the Super Bowl in 2026, but I know they'll be competitive because of the draft capital they have and because of the additions they made and even because of their departures. The one thing that Kansas City has done, like any other top-tier organization in the NFL has done, is be able to replace good talent, because they were the biggest reason that the talent became good, because they developed it. You see so many players at the quarterback spot, at the DB spot, at the defensive tackle spot, at offensive line, that don't develop early on in their careers in the NFL, and then they end up getting a second contract that's not lucrative. That's not what it is. The reason Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson were able to get big-time contracts for the Rams was because they were properly prepared in Kansas City. Eric Bieniemy coming back into the fold on that offensive side of the football is going to be phenomenal for the Chiefs. I don't know what they'll look like, but I guarantee you they'll look better, they'll look more succinct, and they'll continue to be a team that has to be reckoned with, not just in the AFC West, but in the AFC as a whole.